showing out, making moves, no doubt. FFA pride, it's what we're all about. From classroom dreams to real world flair, we got the stories you won't find anywhere. Beyond the jacket where the stories unfold, voices of the future, fearless and bold. Tune in now, let the passion ignite. It's more than a jacket, it's a way of life. Beyond the jacket where passion meets purpose.
Welcome back to Beyond the Jacket podcast. It is our 1-year anniversary and we are super excited to be celebrating with all of our listeners. Today the roles are reversed and I am being the guest and Rachel and Tanner are interviewing me about our FFA journey, my FFA journey and everything that I got to do in the Blue Jackets. So why don't you guys introduce yourself, especially Tanner? Our listeners haven't got to meet you yet.
Yeah, that's right. Paige, you reminded me this morning that we did one of these clear back when Beyond the Jacket started, and it was just practice. Nobody got to see it, right? It was behind closed doors. So thanks for the opportunity for allowing me to come celebrate with you. My name is Tanner Winterhoff. I'm one of the co-hosts of the Farm for Profit podcast, which I guess you would call the mother podcast to Beyond the Jacket or a sister podcast to Beyond the Jacket, but been very thankful to be able to do that for quite a while. And it's been really fun to see Paige grow in her experience of being able to interview. But I grew up on a hog farm in Northwest Iowa. We grow corn and soybeans. I married into a fat cattle feedlot here in Central Iowa, where I spend most of my time when I am not here at the studio.
There we go. And Rachel's back. Rachel's been kind of MIA for a little bit. Welcome back, girl.
No, Paige has been doing so good on the podcast without me that I just didn't even need to hop on anymore. So she has been fulfilling the job of host super well. But for those who forgot who I am, my name is Rachel. I work here at Farm for Profit and I work with Paige on the Beyond the Jacket podcast. But I'm from Eastern Iowa. I'm an FFA alum and I absolutely loved my FFA experience when I was in high school and in college and served as a state FFA officer here in the state of Iowa. And really just enjoy talking to every student and alumni now that we've expanded kind of to that category as well, or the teachers too. They are just so great when we interview them. So to start off and to kick things off, I would love to talk to Paige about how she joined FFA, because I think we need to go back to the beginning of when you started your FFA journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I switched schools from a small private school to a public school at the beginning of my 7th grade year in January, right after Christmas break. I went in as the new kid with no friends. I was scared to death, absolutely just beyond myself. And my first class on Monday morning was ag science, and I knew FFA was a thing, but I grew up as a 4-H kid, so saw the kids in the Blue Jacket at the fair, but really didn't know what they stood for. So got involved in ag class, and the teacher at the time, Miss Newell, she was like, "Paige, you have an ag background. Why don't you come to our FFA meeting today?" And I was like, "Oh man, first day of school. I don't know anybody. I'm not going to this meeting." But the following month, once I made some friends and things of that nature, I jumped in headfirst to FFA. I was a general member at that point, didn't hold an office, really didn't compete in anything. 3 weeks later after my first FFA meeting, the big COVID hit, and we went on full online school. New kid, barely any friends, no outlet, and everything went online. So FFA meetings were held on Zoom and things of that nature. So definitely my beginning in the Blue Jacket looked a little different than most. Obviously, there was not a bunch of competitions or even a state convention at that time to kind of hook you and keep you there. But the following year, I had made some great friends into the beginning of my 8th grade year after participating in some summer camps. And I decided to run for office at the beginning of my 8th grade year and secured the office of president, which I know is a little unconventional going from no office to a presidential office with very little background in FFA. But that really kick-started my journey as far as going further into it in high school and things of that nature. So that's kind of how it started for me. I know it's very different than a lot of other kids.
For our background, when you ran for president then, were you like president of your entire school's chapter in 8th grade? or how did that work?
So our middle school and high school chapters are completely separate. They're not in the same school nor in the same part of town, actually. But it is our feeder school into our high school program here in Fort Pierce, which is super exciting because for a very long time, we did not have a middle school FFA chapter in our area. So the chapter was actually only established 2 years when I had joined. And so that kind of being said, you were only in FFA 7th and 8th grade in our middle school chapter. So I was only kind of in charge, if you will, of 7th and 8th grade FFA students.
Yeah. The reason I asked is because here in Iowa, like the middle school chapters are part of the high school chapters often. They're one big chapter. And so that it's different from state to state. So all of our listeners that are in other states, they might have an experience more like Iowa's versus Florida's where they're separate. So that's really cool. But
how big of a school? How big of a school did you go to, Paige? Like, what was your class size?
Middle school, I think there was around 300 7th and 8th graders. I mean, not active FFA. That's just general class between the grades. Right. As far as high school goes, I graduated with, I think it was 417 was my graduating class.
So that might be part of the reason because, I graduated with 31. So you might have just needed middle schoolers to come to be large enough to actually have a meeting when you hosted.
That's oh my goodness. I can't even imagine 31. Like, I just can't even wrap my brain around that size. My dad graduated with 1,800. And I remember him being like, 417? That's nothing. And I was like, 1,800? We'd be there all day.
You knew everybody, and you knew everybody's parents. You knew their siblings. You probably even knew who their grandparents were. And even if they visited from out of town just to watch a sporting event, you just knew where everything was and who everything was.
Yeah.
Even though it's that big, it's probably still the same as far as like in FFA. You kind of become friends with everybody, and then you know who their grandmas are and their moms are, and it's just one big happy family at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think that's what's so cool about your experience with FFA is that it's kind of like your own little high school within your high school is what your experience sounds like from what I know, because you were super close with your advisors and things like that, and you still talk to some of them today. But before you were in FFA, I know you were in 4-H as well. Can you talk a little bit about the transition from 4-H to FFA and what the difference was and what you liked and what you disliked?
Yeah, we've actually had a lot of guests that started in 4-H, so I think this is a good part to like kind of highlight, Rachel. So I started in FFA as not FFA, excuse me, 4-H. I started in 4-H at 8 years old. I was kind of in 4-H beforehand, but I wasn't allowed to show any animals and I didn't do the clover bud thing. My siblings were in 4-H, so I just kind of palled around to all the meetings with my parents, and our 4-H leader, Miss Murphy, God, I love her. She kind of named me like the yearling of our 4-H club because I wasn't allowed to be a full heifer, if you will. She had funny names for everything. That's one of the reasons. She was so good to everybody. But I was like the original yearling member. We all had like our little candles at initiation. And mine was red. Everybody else was green. She kind of, because I had to go to everything, she included me. But I started showing pigs in 4-H when I was 8 years old. And then when I got to 8th grade, I got a spot on our county fair steer list. And I was like, oh, guys, that's what I want to do. Growing up in 7th generation beef cattle family, I wanted to show cows. That was where I wanted to do, but I had to be strong enough to do it. So my brother and I started showing steers and heifers my 8th grade year, and I just worked through the offices there. Held very many offices in the pig club as well as the cattle club, and then kind of worked through both 4-H and FFA through high school. I did all leadership events through FFA, and then I showed all of my livestock animals through 4-H. That way I could be active in both, which was a lot from time to time to be able to balance all of that as well as some other social clubs. Lordy, I was busy. But both provided their benefits, and I met some of my lifelong friends through that. And going to the University of Florida now, 4-H is really involved there as well as FFA. And being able to have those connections leading into a bigger university where I am now is fantastic, because you're kind of just swimming around like a little fish in a shark tank until you find your people. And to be able to have those people is great. And it is different the way things are set up, but I received a lot of benefits from both.
Yeah, your officership seems to be a very common theme. You must have gotten hooked when you were young. Talk about what your leadership looked like as you progressed through your high school years in FFA.
Yeah, so I ran for office. So I ran as an 8th grader for high school office, because officer elections were always in the spring right before our banquets in May. And so I ran and I received the office of treasurer, which, let me just tell you, I did not love. There's a lot of glamorous moments in the Blue Jacket, but there's also a lot of things that probably weren't my favorite, but I think it's just as important to know what you like as you don't like, and career as well as education. So I was the treasurer my 9th grade year of high school, and I learned the checks and balances and had to give the treasurer's report at every meeting and meet with our school treasurer. And that was really important. And I learned a lot of skills that could help me for the future, as well as budgeting, being invoice requests, so on and so forth. Then I was the vice president my sophomore year of high school. The way my high school had that set up was there's 3 areas: strengthening agriculture, building leaders, and community involvement. 3 parts of the POA. I don't remember exactly what they were called, but I was the vice president of strengthening agriculture, and there was different committees under that. And so I was the chair of each one of those committees, essentially with co-chairs under me of general FFA members that ran those committees and oversaw other FFA members fulfill those requirements for the National FFA's Premier Chapter candidacy award there. So that was really special to be able to be in a management position with other students, kids that might not hold an officer position, but have a leadership role within our chapter. And I really enjoyed that. I kind of found through that role that I didn't like being large and in charge. I kind of liked being more of the workhorse, essentially. And I kind of like to be behind the scenes. So definitely being in front of the camera today, talking about my own journey, actually is a little nerve-wracking because I like to be behind the scenes and not in front of the camera. But that really wasn't a realization until I was elected as president my junior year of high school. And I realized in that role, I thought I was going to be able to be more interactive and plan events, but really it was more managing people, which, once again, great skill to have as far as industry, but I like to work and I like to be involved. And I'm also minorly a bit of a control freak. So giving people a lot of things to do and not being able to be like, oh gosh, I can't make that flyer, or that's somebody else's role, it's not mine. And teaching myself that as a leader, it's not about your title, it's about stepping back and really allowing others to step in and teach was a great lesson for me. I really needed that at that point in my life, going into running for state office the next year. So when it came to senior year elections, I was burnt out, honestly, Tanner and Rachel. I was done. I wanted to be a state officer so bad. I had told so many people for so many years that's what I wanted to do. And I felt on my heart that I had to run for office as a chapter officer my senior year. And looking back, I think I shouldn't have. Okay, so like I said, there's a bunch of glamorous moments, but sometimes you have to know when to stop. And I ran for office and was vice president again, managing people, being that workhorse for our chapter, fell in love with FFA again. And I'm glad I ran for office. You know, you had that moment of like, should I not? What should I do? But kind of stepping out of the main leadership position or the face of our chapter kind of reinforced my love for the jacket. A lot of people were like, wow, you were denoted or things of that nature. But really, it was me being put back in a place that I fell in love with it again. So I ran for state office my senior year of high school to serve a gap year before my freshman year in college, and I was not elected. which looking back, that was God's plan for me. I am right where I'm supposed to be. If I would have been elected as a state officer, I wouldn't be able to be a host on Beyond the Jacket podcast. So it all works out in the way it's supposed to. And each of those officer roles, I mean, gosh, the benefits of those. I've learned so much, whether it was good or bad, about myself, about others. And it just sets me above in certain ways. I know a bunch of kids were officers in their chapters, and you get into career and you're like, man, the skills I learned in FFA. And you don't really realize it until you're out of the blue jacket, for sure.
Now, which year was it that we met? Was that your sophomore year?
That was my sophomore year. So November of 2023, I believe, we met on the U.S. Sugar Train. And that's when my SAE was born, the spring of 2023.
Let's talk about that. What was your SAE at that time?
Yeah, so the beginning of my sophomore year at our officer retreat each summer, my FFA teacher was like, what is your goals? Kind of like a yearly review for work. What's your 5-year plan type situation? And that's when we sat down and really established state office. What were my goals as far as running for office or being involved with different CDEs and LDEs? And she was like, Paige, if you're running for state office, girl, you need an SAE. Like, you're slacking. We should have had this done last year. Listeners, I know we focus a lot on SAEs, but those are your supervised agriculture experiences, where members kind of get to take what they learn in the classroom in an FFA and take it out on their own for their passions. So truthfully, I wanted something that would check the box and be super easy. So I picked Ag Communications because I had a telephone and I could post online every other day, twice a week, whatever, and educate consumers about the agriculture industry in my area, especially focusing on my background in agriculture, on a cow-calf operation. And then before I was born, we ran a bunch of citrus. So kind of having that background and knowledge, I was able to kind of focus on those industries as well as some others in the state of Florida. Well, believe it or not, it turned into kind of my full-time job. It was not an easy check the box thing. It turned into something I absolutely loved. And I learned a bunch of new skills through that. So posted every day, essentially, manually, because I had no idea what a scheduling platform was until I met Farm for Profit. Lots of new skills gained. But in November, the U.S. Sugar team invited me on their VIP influencer tour to kind of capture the U.S. sugar industry and post online and be an advocate for them. And Farm for Profit was there. I was the youngest one there with a bunch of older individuals, and I brought my mom. A lot of people thought my mom was the influencer and not me, for example, Tanner. And so I got to talk to a bunch of industry people in ag communications, and I was like, that's what I want to do for the rest of my life. Tanner and the guys invited me to come on Farm for Profit podcast on the sugar train, and I got to talk to Corey and Tanner a little bit about my background in the agriculture industry and a little bit about my SAE. And so that was super exciting, and I think it was April of the following year, 2024, I got this really long, extensive email from Tanner, and I really thought it was spam mail. But I ran in the kitchen, and I was like, Mom, do you remember Farm for Profit? They want me to work for them, and I was so excited and truthfully had no idea what I was doing. But the best thing to admit is I don't know, and I want to learn. And anybody listening, I think that's a little nugget of information to tuck in your back pocket is I don't know and I want to learn, which are the most important things you'll ever say. So the following day called Tanner and he was like, I want you to schedule some content for us, kind of learn, get involved. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I want to do it. And so little by little I learned and got involved with Farm for Profit, and I haven't looked back. And now this is my degree path. I'm majoring in ag communications, and the one thing to check the box turned into a part-time job and majoring in ag comm. So you never know where it'll take you as far as SAEs go.
I will tell you, as a grown man, that email and the communication with a minor female was very strategic. There was a lot of words in that email to make sure it was very clear that we respected your talents and thought that there was a lot of promise. But yes, I could probably go back and find the email, and I would probably laugh right alongside you. But so glad we sent it.
We're gonna have to post a snippet of it because Tanner's like approach to emails always makes me giggle, I feel like.
I remember reading it and I was like, is this real? Like, do they really want me? You know, kind of the realization of, oh my gosh, they want me. I'm still in high school. I do not have a degree or any knowledge beyond what I've kind of self-taught myself through my SAE. I only posted on Instagram and Facebook, and heck, we post on X, LinkedIn, all these different TikTok, all these different platforms that I wasn't versed in. Believe it or not, I actually wasn't allowed to have social media growing up, which makes this even more funny. And so my first go at really doing social media was my SAE. So when I say I know nothing, I meant I knew nothing. So learning on the fly, flying by the seat of my pants, but now I can tell you about analytics and consumer views and all the things that a bunch of general people don't know about social media, thanks to Farm for Profit.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We at Farm for Profit, none of us have degrees as hosts. You know, we don't have communication degrees. I shouldn't say we don't have degrees. I have a finance degree. Corey has an ag degree. You're not a host, Rachel. That's why we brought you on the team.
Okay. I do have a degree in communications.
I'm getting one, guys. I'm just slower.
That's where the true experience that you get through an FFA program, the willingness to jump in and try things. You know, Corey, Dave, and I knew very little about communications except for what we've, had for experience. So yes, when we brought Rachel onto our team, Farm for Profit exploded in the right direction because we actually had a little bit of organization.
Thank God.
But I want to try and get this back on track for you guys because I think there's a lot of different directions we could go for the rest of this. But Rachel, what else do you want to cover about her FFA experiences before we jump into celebrating Beyond the Jacket being here for a year?
I think the last thing to maybe touch on is obviously from the podcast, everybody can tell that Paige is a great public speaker. So I just want you to run through some of the highlights of your public speaking career in FFA and some of the awards you've received, because I know you've done quite well and I feel like you deserve your kudos on those too.
Thank you. The hardest thing to do is to talk about yourself, but I like to talk a lot, so we'll jump into that. I did prepared public speaking my 8th grade year up until my junior year of high school. 6 to 8 minute prepared public speech. You did a bunch of research and you memorized it word for word, and then you delivered that to a panel of judges. And I really loved prepared public speaking. I did it through the Junior Cattlemen's Association here in Florida as well as in 4-H. So I was kind of versed in it before joining FFA. I did a variety of speeches on best management practices, water quality in the state of Florida, a bunch of hot topic issues that were affecting my family's cattle operation. So it allowed me to be involved on kind of what was happening in our family's area and what those long meetings were at work for my mom. But kind of like I said to begin with, I got burnt out on that. I did not want to memorize a dang thing. You listen enough to yourself talk and repeat the same thing over and over again, it gets tiring. And like I had said, the state officer piece, my ag teacher was like, Anna Page, you need to do extemporaneous public speaking. And for those of you listening, or Tanner or Rachel, you get 30 minutes to prepare a speech. You draw an index card off a table, 3 of them. You get to choose between the 3 for your topic of your speech. You write a speech and have to prepare, I think it's 3 to 6 minutes speech. No, 5 to 7. I apologize, got that one wrong. A 5 to 7 minute speech on something you just found out about 30 minutes ago. Some states allow you computer time, some don't. The state of Florida does. You get 10 minutes of computer time, and then you're allowed to bring in a binder and printed resources you find online. But that's kind of the lucky thing in your back pocket. If you pull a topic that's not in your binder, then sorry, you're out of luck, man. I did that my junior year, and I did not want to do it. I fought my mom. I fought my FA advisor. I didn't want to do it. I was over talking, and you weren't going to make me do it. But I ended up doing it because I had to. So I worked through sub-districts. My dad was always a judge at sub-districts. He didn't judge the contest I did. He always did the one I wasn't doing. And he goes, well, how'd it go? And I said, I don't know. I really don't know because I don't know what I just spoke on. I have no idea what I just did. He's like, oh my gosh, Paige, what the heck? You know, like, give it a little more effort. And I was like, well, I tried. I can't lose. I'm super competitive. If you know anything about me, it's that I might not want to do it, but I'm not going to let you win. So, or at least I'm going to try not to let you win. And so I did that, and I won sub-districts, same thing for districts, went on to states, freaking out. I'm like, holy cow, these kids have done this every year. Like, I've done prepared public speaking, and I went on to win the state competition against a boy that actually ended up being a good friend of mine that won the year following. He's like, I've done this since freshman year, and you come in here 1 year and you win the whole dang thing. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I have no idea what I'm doing. But I really owe the success of that to all of the research for prepared public speaking and being really active on my family's agriculture operation to have that roundtable conversation to tie in different issues and just that background knowledge. I competed at nationals for extemporaneous public speaking, and I ended up being second in the nation for that on something I didn't want to do, which still blows my mind. If you could see me, I have goosebumps. I'm talking about this right now. It's still a really big highlight and something I'm really proud about. And it makes me like get emotional. So like, let's not do this. But all of that aside, sometimes it's just saying yes and being uncomfortable that makes the moment so special. Because if I wouldn't have just sucked it up and done it and said yes, there wouldn't have been that success. And to be able to compete on a national stage is a feeling of adrenaline that I don't think skydiving could even give you. And I've never been skydiving, so like, don't take my word for that. But all of that aside, it's an insane feeling. And those skills of being able to talk have been really helpful on the podcast and kind of pulling from the background knowledge and things of that nature. So both of those public speaking experiences were great and taught me amazing skills. But even though I didn't want to do it, I could definitely say extemporaneous public speaking was my favorite LDE.
All right. New rule for Beyond the Jacket.
Uh-oh.
We don't tell Paige who her guest is going to be until 30 minutes before the episode. And she's only allowed...
I don't know about that.
You do great. Outlines, and then I never used them. So technically I extempted the whole time at Commodity Classic.
Yes. I banned her from outlines after Commodity Classic because Paige did so well at Commodity Classic. I would say we can start talking maybe a little bit about some of the highlights of the year, but for sure Commodity Classic was one of the largest highlights of the podcast for the year. And Paige did so good. She shows up, she didn't follow a single outline that she had printed for herself. And I was like, girl, where has this girl been the whole time? She did so amazing, asking them questions, rolling with the flow. I think at one point she was supposed to have one guest and ended up having 5. And the way you handled that was absolutely amazing. And so talk a little bit about, obviously, I think you went through and kind of wrote down 5 top moments of the year. What was your top one?
Oh, man. I think Commodity Classic was probably number 1 as far as a team win for Beyond the Jacket. Filming live was insane. Like, I have no podcast experience besides doing it virtually, and I'm in the comfort of my own home. And I have an outline on my screen as well as the camera, and so I can kind of bounce back and forth. But as far as live goes, everyone's watching you. The cameras are rolling. You have partners standing there. You have guests that probably know as much or more about the agriculture industry than I do. And I'm just a kid. And I remember telling my mom, she asked me, she's like, how's it going? Are you having fun? And I'm like, I'm a guppy in a shark pond. Like, I was just like scared to death, but it was the most exhilarating, best time to be able to connect with alumni and FFA members. I mean, filming with 5 FFA members at once with all different FFA journeys was definitely hard to balance, but I think we did well at executing it. Or talking to Carson, I mean, he has a great communications background and things of that nature, so he knows when I'm talking about analytics, or there's a bunch of people rattling off a bunch of tractor names that I have no idea what are, and everybody's there to see the new John Deere tractor, and I have no idea what it does. Maybe I should have done some research beforehand on what the heck was going on. But Commodity Classic was definitely a highlight as far as team goes. Personal win for myself this year was being a Ag Communications proficiency finalist for the state of Florida for Beyond the Jacket podcast. So super excited to find out in 2 weeks how that goes. We're top 4 in the state right now, so no matter what, that's fantastic. But we'll see if we win it at the state convention, and maybe when we're at National FFA Convention, Beyond the Jacket will also get to be on stage at National Convention. So crossing my fingers for that. That would be like the cherry on top of the whole ice cream sundae for me personally.
So do you remember, where did the idea start for this podcast?
Oh man, I remember Rachel and I were kind of balancing scheduling together at that point for Farm for Profit. And I was like, okay, so we're both doing each other's jobs at this point. What is happening? What's going on? I really like Rachel, but what's going on? And I know when we kind of did our annual phone call for the year, we kind of looked at Farm for Profits analytics, and a bunch of youth were kind of contacting you guys about how to get involved in agriculture, as well as kind of interacting with you guys' content. And so we wanted a youth outlet for Farm for Profit listeners, for the youth listeners there, and especially how to get involved even if you're still in school and an agriculture background. And because of my FFA journey, Beyond the Jacket was born. It's kind of like I stated at the beginning, I had no idea what I was doing, but Tanner and Rachel handed me the reins and was like, dream as big as you can possibly dream for this podcast. And we'll kind of narrow it back down to being capable of being in production, but dream as big as you can dream. Do research on who you'd like to come on a podcast. Do you want it to be a podcast? All the different questions I was faced with on a Tuesday afternoon. And I remember coming home to my mom being like, what the heck do I do? And she goes, Paige, think about what you've done in FFA. There's an entire nation, Alaska, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, of kids like you that are involved in agriculture. And if these kids are contacting Farm for Profit looking for how to get involved, show them how. And it was kind of like the light bulb turned on for me. And so I started dreaming up Beyond the Jacket podcast, and we've talked to alumni, teachers, FFA students. Heck, Rachel and I talked to a dolphin trainer, all because she was involved in FFA. That was a really cool episode. You don't think that's a career in agriculture, but it is. And things of that nature, and being able to show kids that there's careers beyond plows and sows. There's ag communications, there's a dolphin trainer, there's people in chemical sales and things of that nature. Things that might not interest me, but it might interest them. And kind of growing the next generation was ultimately the goal of this podcast. And I think it's done better than I could have dreamed. I don't know about you guys.
And did you think a year ago that you'd have a 1-year anniversary episode?
No. And where has this last year gone? I don't know if anybody else feels like it's screamed past us. But kind of reminiscing, this week a year ago, we filmed with Chloe Zittergen about her flowers SAE, and she was a state officer, and I was actually sitting in the same room at my parents' house, and I had my outline. I was like, just follow the outline. You are being recorded. Breathe and follow the outline. Heck, I've talked in front of 2,000 people without a script. I could do it on a computer screen, but I don't know why. I was like, okay, Rachel's watching me. This girl's a state officer. Oh my gosh, but looking back at how much the podcast has grown as far as retained listeners from 2 or 3 a week to now multiple hundred a week, and then kind of looking at myself and the connections that I've made and the way I've grown is just insane. I can't really even put it into words.
It's so funny how people are, because you can speak in front of thousands live, and then when you get on a recording, you're a little uncomfortable. Rachel can speak on a recording, no problem, but if you put her in front of 10 people,
Oh golly, not good. At all.
Straight on.
Yeah, we're just opposites. It works out.
it is such an interesting perspective to have. That's one thing we took very seriously at Fine for Profit is once you start gaining an audience, you realize that they listen to what you say. So being careful with how things are presented and the messages that you're delivering is super important, because you still want to have fun and make it entertaining. But if you tell somebody to go buy Code Red Mountain Dew and it ends up not being good for them, you probably shouldn't have said that's something you should go buy. But it's really, really a unique experience that you've been having. Is there an interview that's changed the way you've thought about something? Like you completed the interview and went, huh.
Actually, truthfully, it was one of our more recent episodes. I know there's been a lot of favorites, but one that really resonated with me was actually Josie's, which hasn't aired yet. So listeners, you'll get to see that in a couple weeks. Kind of get a little preview. Josie was a state officer, and we really kind of went into the more not so glamorous side of that experience and how she felt like after state office, she even had to be kind of tailored and perfect in her own home, which is truthfully a feeling that I also had, coming from the candidacy standpoint, and feeling like even with your friends, you had to be kind of put in a box, and something as simple as nail color always had to be neutral, and kind of breaking that barrier and finding who you are outside of the blue jacket or beyond it. Haha, pun intended. But kind of focusing on like the struggles as well as the glamorous sides. And she really verbalized something that I had felt, but not necessarily had been able to verbalize. So I thought her episode was great. And I can't wait for listeners to see it. But that's probably one of my favorites so far, as well as T. Wayne. He was one of the national officers we had in. And man, he was full of energy. He was just excited to be anywhere. And one of his quotes about it's a blessing to have tired feet. Never heard it put that way, but running the pavement and being everywhere and interacting with a bunch of people, it is such a blessing to have those tired feet. It means you've done your job well, you've met with a bunch of people, and if you're not tired at the end of the day, then what work have you put in? And I think that was a really great message for listeners, and especially for myself. When you get tired, you want to stop, but if you just push a little bit further, that's when the connections are made. And so I think those
I love that.
Episodes.
Yeah.
I think that's a great one. I liked your plows and sows comment, but I think it's a blessing to have tired feet is really great. But speaking of that, have you noticed from your interviews, is there a common theme? Is there something that's kind of similar amongst most of the people you've talked with?
Oh, goodness. I think I always ask this question at the end of our episodes is, what's a piece of advice you would give to a younger FFA member or someone that wants to take the same path as you? Mostly because sometimes I need the advice myself, and people think about things differently. If I asked each one of you a question, you're both going to answer it two totally different ways, but it doesn't mean either one is wrong. And a bunch of the students have said, just say yes. Like, I had a teacher come on, I believe it was Miss Laura. I don't remember how to pronounce her last name, but she won the Golden Owl Award. I believe she was a advisor in Iowa. I'm not 100% sure. And she was saying that I've approached kids, hey, why don't you do this CDE? Hey, why don't you do this LDE? And if you're told no more than twice, she's going to stop asking you for those opportunities. And if you say no too many times, those opportunities walk out on you. And so many students have told the story of when I finally said yes, it opened doors and windows to new paths that I never would have expected. Kind of like my journey with extemporaneous public speaking. If I'd have never stepped up and said yes, it never would have happened. I'd have never been able to compete in nationals. And so I think that's a theme that goes through most of our episodes is stepping out of your comfort zone, finding that open door that might not be what you've planned, but it finds what you're passionate about. And I have to tell myself that even with work or personal life, if you just say yes and step out of your comfort zone just a little bit, you could find new areas that could change your life forever, just like FFA had changed mine.
I like that a lot. There's also the right time to say no. There's
that is true. I mean, you also have to learn how to say no. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Don't take me the wrong way. But if you do have the time and you are willing, say yes to those opportunities, because don't say yes too much. Okay. Take that with a grain of salt.
I feel like you have more of the capability to say yes to everything and figure out what you do and don't like. When you're older, not calling Tanner old or anything, but you have that chance to say no to more things because you know what already you like and you don't like. And so not accepting to do something is probably better if you hate doing it. And so you can become more decisive. So I think that's the difference there in ages a little bit.
Yes. There is a very strategic reason as to why Paige hosts Beyond the Jacket and Rachel was a part of Beyond the Jacket and not the old guys who are the hosts of Farm for Profit.
I joined one and it was pretty funny. We did do an interview with Corey and that was pretty good. He enjoyed his FFA experience. Tanner, you weren't an FFA. Is there something from the podcast that you've seen this last year that you're like, I wish I would have got to experience that in high school?
Well, it's weird because I was in 4-H and I always saw when we got to the fair, right, all the FFA projects. And clubs are clubs, but I just felt like I was out of the club when you saw the FFAers. And getting to learn more about the competition and the conventions, that's what 4-H didn't have for me. And that's what I feel like I missed out the most. And I think I would have loved extemporaneous speaking. I love speech competition in high school. I got to do radio broadcasting and got to do improv and these little fun things that I think could have been really neat to experience in FFA. And the biggest thing that I have is I don't want to make a blanket statement, but every FFA kid that I've met since Farm for Profit has started, extremely poised, very professional, handles themselves very well. I mean, you're looking at what people would call a risk of hiring Paige, who is in Florida when Farm for Profit podcast is recorded in Iowa, to work on her own as a high schooler to manage the social media output for one of the nation's largest ag podcasts and trust that it's going to get done. Like that's what FFA does. Like, Paige, you're awesome to begin with, but part of the FFA part is what made that even possible.
Yeah, and I think that's also a common theme through each episode, Tanner, is the ability of kids younger than me, even older than me, to talk so well. I was in a speech and rhetoric class this past semester at the University of Florida, and to watch students, even professors, not be able to communicate effectively was truthfully frustrating for someone that is well-versed in communications, but not being able to understand them or for them not to convey their message effectively, it creates a barrier. And I got to kind of resonate on how fortunate I am to be able to speak well in front of a large audience, whether that is virtually or in person, because there are a lot of kids that don't have that background. And that's a skill that's learned. It's not inherited. And I think that's something that, while it's important to learn in school, FFA really reinforced that and put you in a lot of areas where you didn't have a choice but to talk. Whether that's parliamentary procedure, prepared, extents, discussion, so on and so forth. There's 100 different contests you could do, but every single one of them, I believe, requires you to give a set of reasons or a speech. And something you don't realize while in the Blue Jacket is everything it's doing for you. I I really can't fathom, like, I just talk. I don't think about it. And a lot of kids are that way. We've talked about that a lot on the podcast. But when you get in those areas where individuals might not have had that background, it's very obvious to see. And goodness gracious, there's so much that you can do no matter what avenue you want to take.
So I know we're kind of pushed for time. Rachel, do I have a couple of minutes to ask a couple of questions?
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have any blooper moments? Do you remember something that just did not go right, like a booger hanging out during a recording or a stain on your shirt?
Okay, well, there's so many to count from. I get tongue-tied a lot. My brain works faster than my mouth. I'm really surprised. I did it in the intro a little bit. But when we first started the podcast, I could not pronounce last names to save my life. Okay. And Rachel would get so cracked up at me. We had Carson Remain on the podcast, and I kept wanting to say Carson Remind. It was something like that. Remind, remain, something. I don't know. And he went on to compete at nationals for extemp, and I'm like, man, he's awesome. And he has a fantastic SAE. And I cannot say his name for the life of me. You know, like, and there's just so many times I'd get tongue-tied or wouldn't say anything right, or kind of like today where I had to do the intro 3 times because I just couldn't get it down. And then I'd start laughing so hard at myself, and Rachel would start laughing. I'm like, I'm so sorry, so-and-so. Just give me like 5 minutes because I got to stop laughing. Once I start, it's not ending, you know? And there's been a lot of good moments like that where you say something silly and have to restart.
That reminds me, said Kale, and she kept saying his name was Kale, and she could not save her life on this episode. She was like, I can't remember how to say it. I'm like, Kale, like it's pretty easy.
Kale.
Yeah, like the vegetable.
I kept saying this name Khalil.
Yeah, she kept saying Khalil and Khalil, and I was like, Kale. I don't know where she was getting Khalil from.
She left me alone on that to do it by myself. I was like, I can't even say this guy's name right. It was a whole funny thing, but it went out. It was a good episode. Don't worry.
You got his name down by the end, and so it was all good.
Yes. No.
Tell your listeners what you have coming up for the rest of 2026.
For the rest of 2026, man, we've been recording like crazy. For the next couple of weeks, we have a bunch of alumni and then 2 students, which are going down the horticulture route and diversified production there, which I'm super excited about because we haven't really dabbled into that quite yet. And then the end of October, man, I'm so excited. We get to go to the National FFA Convention and Expo and film live with FFA members and alumni. So I'm excited to be in the expo hall interacting with FFA members and kind of go back to my stomping grounds. I get to go to Florida FFA State Convention next week, which is going to be a surreal moment going back as State FFA staff and being able to kind of see the backside and production of State FFA Convention, going from a member to a staff member. So a lot of exciting things. I'm sure there will be new things to pop up along the way with new guests.
You're also going to Farm Progress Show in August.
Oh, yeah, that too. See, there's so much I forget. Yeah. What, Rachel?
I said that's in September, not August.
Oh, that's right. It's late this year, isn't it? So it's the first week of September.
Yeah.
Yes, we're going to Farm Progress.
She's coming to Iowa, which is exciting, I feel like. So
I've never been to Iowa. I'm excited.
So I would encourage your listeners that, one, if they're from Iowa and they're going to go to Farm Progress Show, and if they have interest in being a guest on the podcast or meeting you, that they reach out. Same thing with convention. You know, that's the best part about having recording equipment out in the public is it provides opportunities. Podcasting is not like a radio show. We have the opportunity to take and seize a conversation when it's here, and we can share that down the road because we don't want to miss out on really great times to be able to do that and meet people.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tanner, for that. It just slipped my brain. I was so excited about National FFA Convention.
So before my last question for you, I have one suggestion for a potential future guest. Actually, I have 2 questions for you because sometimes your audience can help you. My first suggestion is I think you need to have your mother on as a guest.
You know, I had a guest say that the other day. My mom wasn't in FFA though.
I know,
She
but it sounds like she is instrumental in the amount of yeses that you have said.
Oh, absolutely. She was my momager, which was a name she acquired on the U.S. sugar train. I don't exactly remember who gave that to her, but she was
That's
my
probably
mom.
Dave.
Who knows? Dave was actually the first farm-for-profit host to speak to me. He saw that I had a belt buckle on, and he was like, "And what do you show, young lady?" And I was like, "I show skewers and heifers." You know, I'm so nervous. All these people know what they're doing. I don't. And that kind of hit off the conversation, and thank God for Dave, I guess.
You know what's funny, though, is none of us knew what we were doing. You thought we knew what we were doing.
Oh,
We're all just figuring it out.
Matching shirts is an ambiance you just cannot. You just don't know how that affects people.
Do you have anybody on your wish list that you'd like to have as a guest? Like if everybody hits up their DMs to try and get them on Beyond the Jacket.
Oh, I have a list. This might not have been a good question. I would love to have Temple Grandin on the podcast. One of the core curriculum pieces in a bunch of FFA and agriculture education classrooms is Temple Grandin's movie of how she created all of the cattle chutes and the way cattle move and her journey in agriculture and FFA. I would love to have her on the podcast. Additionally, Cody Johnson. Oh my gosh, do you want to watch me fangirl? He was in FFA. His entire singing career started because of FFA Talent, which is a competition you can do in the FFA. Which he has a documentary on Netflix, I believe, or Hulu, so you'll have to go check that one out. Yeah. But I would love to have both of them on. Ryan